Hi, Eric.
Hello there, Aaron.
How many people do you think died during the entire witchcraft hysteria in like the 1600s?
In Salem specifically?
No.
Across all Europe?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
And
I would guess it's... We're talking like you're giving me about a 100-year period here?
Yeah, that's about right.
I would say just south of 1,000.
Oh, that's a good guess. I've actually asked this question to a few people. I
Yes.
got anywhere from hundreds to, about hundreds, right?
Uh-huh.
60,000 people
Whoa!
died. Brian
That many.
Levac, there's an estimate here on Wikipedia, under the title of the article named Satan.
That's part of the Satan article?
Yeah, it is.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So there was a, this is great. In the late 1500s, the Dutch demonologist Johann Weyer argued that witchcraft did not exist, but that Satan promoted belief in it to lead Christians astray.
Oh,
but the panic still kept going.
That's a compelling argument.
The thing I like about that is that you could have a profession, and that profession could be
Demonology?
demonology.
Well, if no one is going to be an expert in something, then no one is an expert in it.
What are we talking about today?
The devil.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about the devil. So can I tell you why I thought this might be an interesting topic to do a show on? I was listening to conference, as I am wont, and to various talks, which I was enjoying, and I just noticed that this was me just thinking, I thought that I was hearing the word Satan more often during conference.
Satan.
Yeah, and that I was hearing the adversary, because a lot of times you'll hear talks.
The adversary.
Yeah, you'll hear talks
one.
saying that, Satan will tempt you and try you, and you will have to resist, and you can become a good person if you ignore the trials and so forth.
Yes.
And I was curious as to whether whether it was just me, whether it was some recency bias, right? Something I had just noticed, and
you were finally prepared to hear.
And I just started hearing it everywhere, or if it was really something that was true.
Yeah.
Mormons have an interesting relationship with Satan that is very different than other churches.
Yeah, he is our brother.
Yeah, that's right. So, is it just me, or have you noticed this too, or maybe it is just me?
So I think I said this when we did the millennial episode. I think that in the Nelson era, we're hearing more millennial talk, and by millennial talk, I also mean end of the world talk.
Yeah.
And by end of the world talk, I also mean the devil.
Yeah.
So yes, although I had not thought to break it down by category, all that doom and gloom strikes me as millennial writ large, and so I hadn't really separated the devil out separately from that other stuff.
I did try to go do some statistics. You gave me a website to do so.
Yes, I did.
But that website stopped working, unfortunately. It's LDS-conference-
Yeah, I have it open right now.
Maybe it worked for you.
I have stats for Satan, the adversary, and devil.
What do you see?
So Satan, so keep in mind these numbers that I'm quoting are for a full decade. So from the conference talk, April 1970, to the final conference talk of October 1979 is the 1970s.
Yeah.
But Satan peaks in the 1970s, going from the 1850s to the 2010s. Satan, 478 mentions in the 1970s. Second most common decade, 1960s, 304. In the most recent decade, 234 mentions in General Conference.
So maybe it is.
The adversary, however, peaks in the 2010s. 168. That is a big leap over the 2000s, where there was only 99, and that was the second most common.
So this is the website that what it does is it searches conference talks.
That's right. It's a starts with a C.
Corpus?
Corpus, yes, is the word they use here, and that is an accurate word, but I was looking for a different one. But yeah, it's a corpus of all the words that have been said in General Conference.
Yeah.
The devil, however, is only 71 in the 2010s, which is an all-time low.
Hey.
That one peaks at 709 back in the 1850s, the first decade of record.
709. Wow.
709. So devil is way down.
Way down.
Satan is not at its historic high, but the adversary is through the roof.
Yeah. A bit of a euphemism, isn't it?
Do you think this is J.K. Rowling's fault?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think it might be. So,
I have no idea. Why would you say so?
I'm not saying that her books are demonic and we should burn them.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is she really made popular this idea of the one who should not be named.
Oh, interesting.
I wonder if on some subconscious level we don't say things anymore.
Well, it does make me uncomfortable. This whole topic makes me uncomfortable, and one of the reasons I wanted to go ahead and go through with it is because I don't know why. And I thought it may be worth working out why it's so uncomfortable to talk about El Diablo, like, as a Mormon.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe in the adversary as well.
Yeah,
but we don't talk about him.
We don't talk about him very much.
Except that we do, based on this on conference talks.
Yeah, he has a character in Scripture, but he's a complicated character. Mm-hmm. Like in Moses, he tells Moses to fall down, Son of Man, and worship me. Yeah. Which is fairly similar to the experience Jesus has with Satan in the New Testament. But it's very different from who Satan is, say, in Job, where he plays this more attorney-like role, representing one side of the issue, which is my understanding of the word Satan in Hebrew, is that it has this sort of prosecutorial tinge to it. In seminary, we just started 2nd Nephi, and we were reading chapter 1, parts of it in class today. As you know, the Book of Mormon loves this little thing about, if you keep my commands, you shall prosper in the land. If you will not, you'll be cut off from my presence. This is Nephi's the first one, at least in our version of the Book of Mormon. Nephi's the first one to hear that, and it gets repeated ad infinitum. So in 2 Nephi chapter 1, verse 18, Lehi warns his children that a cursing will come upon you for the space of many generations, as you are led according to the will and captivity of the devil. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that makes it most clear that we absolutely believe in a Satan of some sort is the section of the Doctrine and Covenants that tells you how to identify a righteous or an unrighteous spirit.
Yeah. This is also one of our fantastic, one of our interesting beliefs.
Yeah. Yes, it is kind of a. So I'm holding in my hand, Aaron, a book by D. Michael Martinsdale titled Brother Brigham. This is a novel. It's a Mormon horror novel. Oh. It was about 20 years ago. It was something that was always being talked about in online Mormon lit circles as sort of the great unpublished Mormon novel and proof that there are really good Mormon writings out there that aren't getting published. And I think it's one of the main reasons that Zarahemla Books got started was so that this book that everyone seemed to agree was great could be published. I didn't like it that much. But I do think it's a very interesting idea. The idea is that this LDS fellow is visited by Brother Brigham as an angel. Okay. And Brother Brigham gets him to do things. And at first they seem like good things, but as time goes on, as he's reinstating polygamy and some other stuff, stuff goes down the wrong road. And eventually it ends up that Brother Brigham is not what he seems. Uh-huh. And the line I wanted to read to you, and I'm having a very difficult time finding, even though I know it's in chapter 1, is when Brother Brigham first appears, he remembers that he should offer to shake his hand. And Brother Brigham's like, sure, I guess if you want to. Is that what you want? Is that necessary? And he makes the hero feel stupid. And he's like, oh, okay, it's fine. And the context, the way the dialogue works, it feels like, oh, well, that sounds like Brother Brigham. But he's the devil, as it ends up.
And if you shake the devil's hand...
Yes, you won't feel him.
You won't feel him.
He's not really
that's
there.
What it says that's what it says in the Doctrine and Covenants.
That is what it says, yeah. That's how you test. You ask to shake their hand. And an honest spirit will not shake your hand, and a lying spirit will. And
a resurrected being will shake your hand, and you'll feel a hand.
Yep, because he's a real thing.
I love that part of the DNC because so much of the DNC is practical stuff. Yeah. Like this, right? Just so you know, if you ever actually meet a devil,
this is what you should do.
This is what you should do. I think that's really great.
Is it terribly likely? Maybe not. But we all know what to do.
People used to be really, really worried about it. right? About meeting a devil. They were worried about possession. They were worried about,
And walking down the road.
They were worried about getting into you and like making you do stuff.
Yeah. And this is what was interesting to me is that Satan peaked in the 70s and not in the 80s. If it was going to peak in my lifetime, I would have guessed the 80s. When I was a kid, there was this book called Jay's Journal, which allegedly took place in Utah. It was an anonymously written book written by the same woman who wrote, is it Don't Tell Alice? Let me check my notes real quick, make sure. Do you know that? Have you heard of Don't Tell Alice?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, Go Ask Alice. Sorry, she's the same woman who wrote Go Ask Alice, which is a book about a troubled teen and getting into sex and drugs and so forth. She wrote a number of these anonymous books, allegedly based on real people. And Jay's Journal is about a Utah teenage boy who becomes a Satanist and all that implies. And this was a book that was handed around the mothers of Montpelier, Idaho in the 1980s.
Really?
My aunt had a copy, and she lent it to my mother, who read it and was very careful to keep it away from us children, handed it on. We heard them talking sometimes. This was the great threat. This was the great worry that all our kids would be Satanists.
Wow.
And I didn't know anybody who listened to
I
Slayer.
was going to say, were they right?
To the best of my knowledge, none of us became devil worshippers.
Okay.
To the best of my knowledge.
It's so funny because I reacted to that with scorn, but I think that they were actually really worried about it.
They were genuinely worried about it. Yes. I can't really think of anything else that worried my parents, or my mother specifically, quite so much as the Jay's Journal era of the 1980s, Idaho.
This all reminds me of chick tracts a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I mean by those?
That word sounds really familiar.
So they were short evangelical gospel tracts.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
By
Jack
there's
some great ones with the devil.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I love those.
There's some
so
anti-Mormon ones.
Yeah.
Right?
Just cannot take them seriously.
Right. Here's one that says, they led us into stuff we found in the Harry Potter books. Tarot cards, Ouija boards, crystal balls.
Dungeons and Dragons, Aaron.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to watch that on Saturday morning TV a couple times at my grandma's house, but I had to make sure nobody knew.
So, I think it's fair to say that the various churches, including ours, have different relationships with El Diablo Profundo, and I think ours is a bit unique because you're right. We do believe that Satan is our brother. There is an interesting thing that happened to Mitt Romney. Well, there's an interesting thing that happened to him today.
Just today, yeah.
We'll go into that. But Mitt Romney, in 2008, there was a bit of a kerfuffle between Mike Huckabee and, this was like in 2007.
I have so many Huckabee stories from 2008.
Yeah, okay.
I think I know which one you're going to do.
This is the New York Times, right? Okay.
Does the brother come up here?
Yeah, that's right. So Mike Huckabee insists he spoke out of ignorance. This is the New York Times. Not malice against the faith of Republican rival Mitt Romney when he asked, "Don't Mormons believe that Jesus and the devil are brothers?"
Well, the last 12 years, Mike Huckabee's upstanding behavior as a kind and gentle person has proven that claim correct. No.
Wait, I feel like I'm missing something here.
There's no polite words that belong on our podcast to describe the kind of person that Mike Huckabee has become in the last 12 years.
That's too bad.
He stopped pretending.
He pretty much fell off my radar immediately after that whole thing was over. So, well, anyway, yeah, and then this article by Laurie Goodstein from 2007, which we'll include, it says that Americans are notoriously uninformed about faiths other than their own. They are particularly perplexed about Mormon beliefs, right?
Yes.
And the idea is that, well, I mean, Huckabee kind of got it a bit right here, but it's really not how we...
It's intentionally misleading.
It's intentionally misleading.
Even if we might agree with the...
It's more like we believe we're all spirit children, right? But there's been a big separation here.
Also, if I may...
You may.
The same time this was happening, there was a story on NPR about Huckabee and how he peppered his speeches with... references to the Bible, and they went to Huckabee's supporters and I believe there were people at the Republican National Convention, maybe? I don't know. We would have to look at the NPR story to find out for sure. It wouldn't be that hard to find, I don't think. But and ask them, like, okay, who are these people from these stories? And I forget the specific stories, but the short of it is all these professed Christians didn't know the Bible stories he was collecting. They finally found someone who knew all the stories. That person was a Mormon. So like Huckabee, it's not just true that people don't know other faiths, they don't know their own faiths. And I'm not saying this is like I'm a better than other people thing. I think there's a lot of room to learn. And I think one of the things we see in American culture right now is this idea of it's dangerous to not be right all the time. And yeah.
Well, let's learn. What do we actually believe about Lucifer, the son of the morning?
It's a good question. What do we believe? I honestly, like, as I started to drill down on this topic, I didn't know. I decided I didn't really know. Like, what do we believe about him? It's a good question.
It is a good question.
Because, and as part of that, I reached out on Twitter and asked people, what do you think about Satan? I'm just going to read the first tweet replies. Some of these turned into conversations. We'll share the tweet in our special features, but I'm just going to read the initial responses people gave. I don't love the pitchfork horns depiction of him, but to be honest, I'm not crazy about the suave, glamorous, smooth-talking depiction either. The guy who tells me when things are good, I don't need Jesus, and when things are bad, that Jesus won't take me. Better fix it on my own. I don't think we need Satan at all to explain human moral failings. The concept of Satan seems a bit of a cop-out to me, externalizing blame in a he-made-me-do-it sort of way. But it makes for a metaphor that is easy to teach those unacquainted with human psychology so useful. I think we blame a lot of our own faults on Satan. I also think we as a people invoke him more often and more truly than we do God sometimes.
This one I want to drill down on.
Okay. Should I keep going or should we pause?
Keep going and we'll come back to that one.
A real being. We don't need Satan to explain evil. A really effective metaphor for our baser instincts. I think he's good at his job, but we also make it really easy for him. He ain't heavy, but he's my brother, which is funny. A nice photograph of Michael Ballam.
So, okay, that was my favorite tweet. Whoever did that one, props to you. Yeah. Michael, is it Ballam or Ballam?
Willie DeFord. Oh, I actually don't know.
Yeah. So
I just know him as Satan.
Yeah, right?
At Will Horse Thief.
One of the best looking fellas out there. Michael Ballam.
You know what's on the wall right behind you right now as we sit in the dungeon of the Berkeley Berkeley Ward Library?
Go ahead.
A special evening with Michael Ballam.
Oh, okay, it's a tape?
We could toss it in the VCR when this is over.
Oh, that's great.
He's a piece of my subconscious that the church taught me to think of as a monster, which ended up causing a lot of avoidable self-hatred that I'm now healing from with the help of therapy and healthy relationships. Mm-hmm. I think I dated him once. A nice quotation from Calvin and Hobbes, which I'm not going to read, but you can swing
of copyright,
over
I assume.
And find. No, just because I don't think it's good to read comics out loud. Like,
no, it doesn't work.
They are a marriage of image and words I just don't like. I won't do it for my kids either. Just read them yourself. And that's it. I think that's all of them without getting deeper.
So the thing I wanted to drill in on was the one that it talked about.
Like we blame our own faults on Satan?
Yeah.
And we invoke him more than we invoke God?
Yeah.
But it's my friend Adam who said that. At AKK Figueira? That looks perhaps Portuguese.
So, yes, we need to be. Yes, we do tend to blame things, I think, on Satan that are either actually due to just bad luck, or to our own failings. And this guy that mentions, like, it's been really hard to deal with this worry, this fear of the devil, that had to go like really
it's caused a lot of avoidable self-hatred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't change the language that they use in conference talks, though. So the language is, beware the adversary and, seek unto God. So, what are we actually supposed to be doing here? So, returning to the previous topic, what do we actually believe? There is a Bible dictionary entry on the devil.
Yes, not canonized, but authoritative regardless.
Yeah, Latter-day Revelation confirms the biblical teaching that the devil is reality and that he does strive to lead men and women from the work of God. Right?
Yes.
We believe that they have spirit bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's this interesting and really creepy thing that I always had as a kid, that they're just everywhere. the followers.
Right. That there's the story they tell of somebody, I remember, some make-believe person has a vision, right, and sees the devils, and there's this one guy who only has like one devil sort of vaguely paying attention to him, and another guy who's beleaguered with devils.
You're not talking about like Screwtape Letters, are you?
You know, I think this also shows up in the Screwtape Letters now that you mention it. I believe it does.
By
It's been a long time
Lewis?
since I read them. Yeah, but the version I'm quoting does not, but I think it does. I believe you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway, the guy having the vision in this version says, oh, clearly that man is very righteous because he only has the one devil, and the angel who's showing him says, oh, no, you're wrong. He only needs one devil to keep him. It's that other guy with all the devils who's the righteous one because it takes all the forces of hell, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I believe that does come up in Screwtape also.
Look, I think that this conversation engenders fear. And
sure,
I think that when I was doing self-introspection in prep, why don't I want to have this conversation and record it?
Mm-hmm. Speak of the devil, and there he is.
Yeah, is because of this fear. And I finally really figured out where most of it comes from.
Yeah.
Okay? If you go to the temple,
yeah,
the devil will look you in the eye at the end of the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
And warn you. And it was played by Michael Ballam, right?
For many years.
And he did just a fantastic job. And I was a teenager the first time I went through the temple.
His name
I'm 19.
is clearly descended from Baal. Oh my gosh, Aaron. He is the devil. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Anyway, it is just a bit terrifying, that's all.
Yeah.
So, some people I've heard react to this saying, okay, well, that's fine, but I'm just going to be good, and this is just good motive not to.
Yeah. When I was a child, and by child I mean maybe I'm 14 in the story, maybe, I don't remember exactly, and I was in the temple, which is sacred and sanctified, a place the devil may not enter.
Yeah.
And I had what we might call an untoward thought.
Mm-hmm.
And it was distressing because it couldn't have come from the devil, which means that it only could have come from me, which means I'm bad.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, the devil, like, one thing we can do with the devil is externalize all our own faults and say anything that is bad is not us, right? It's Satan. I think that's kind of a dangerous way to look at it.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so this was just really interesting about the about my discovery of where I think this particular part of the temple ceremony is one of the things that always kind of got to me. I'm not criticizing it. I actually think it's powerful, and I think it's motivating. I think that the rest of the temple ceremony, which is about God and Adam and Eve, and about how we need to progress, and about Jesus Christ, I think these are all valuable things. And so to have this opposition at a critical moment in the ceremony, I actually think is very powerful. Literarily,
yes,
I actually think it's quite good.
Yeah, it's the best role.
But I think this does. Yes, it is interesting that you say that.
Yeah,
I remember going through it live in the through the Salt Lake Temple. Have you done a live
in Manti, I have, yes.
A live
just before
endowment.
Mission.
And and it was, of course, played by old men and women.
Old people.
Yeah. And the old dude that played the devil, he just was so sincere and was like really making sure all the lines landed in the right way. And it was just really compelling. It was really cool. But okay, let's return maybe to the psychology of it for a moment.
Okay.
Right? First, just as a general statement, isn't this belief in the devil fascinating, right?
Sure.
Just as a scientist, just as
Is it any more fascinating than a belief in God or anything supernatural?
I think so. Well, not more fascinating, but I think it's worthy of conversation on its own. Lots of people believe in God. Okay?
Yeah.
And even 500 years ago, people really didn't believe in the devil the same way that we do now. Right? To be fair, we believe in an apostasy, and things like that, where we didn't know as much as we know now. But back then, the devil was a trickster.
Yeah.
Right? A guy who would literally kind of fart around. You read the Wikipedia article on him, the early history of the devil. He was laughable.
Yeah. There are a lot more jokes in the Old Testament. Maybe because humor doesn't survive the passage of time as well.
You think there's jokes in the Old Testament?
Oh yeah, I think Jonah's entirely a joke. Like
I think the whole thing is just a laugh.
Yeah, the Book of Jonah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely do. And having read about it, I'm pretty convinced that historically that's what it is. It's a joke, and if you look at how Purim is celebrated today, like the bad guys in the Esther story are jokes too. They're so over the top. But one of the problems with the passage of time is humor does not age well. Speaking to someone who teaches Shakespeare every year, like humor does not age well. And so something that's a joke 3,000 years ago, we don't get the joke, and we can't tell the difference.
So lots of other folks don't believe. So lots of other religions either don't believe.
Modern liberal Christianity
has kind of gone away from this.
Yeah.
We believe in God, right? And we believe that the Bible is a lot of good stories.
Yeah.
Right? Not all of it's literally true, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm saying we believe as in the context of some of our contemporaries and other religions, and just have decided to ignore the devil.
Yeah.
And just not believe. I think that's interesting. And then you have us, which I think we have kind of a clinical understanding of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I'm having a hard time is because I don't think there's a consistent way we talk about it. There are people who are very concerned about the devil, and there are people who just dismiss the devil as powerless, and there are plenty of Mormons who I don't think believe in the devil.
Look, I never was one of them, but I mentioned the story about the temple when I was a teenager, right? But over the last decade, I haven't hardly given it any thought at all. I only thought this might be fun to talk about when I just noticed this trend.
Conference.
Well,
tell us your reaction to last Sunday.
Last Sunday we had Word Conference.
We did,
right? And we had some really good talks.
We did,
and during one of the leadership talks, we had quite a bit, not quite a bit, but in a couple
greater
talks,
than zero.
Greater than zero mentions of the devil and the adversary, in the same kind of way that we hear in conference. In fact, these talks sounded a lot like conference talks. They were, in other words, they were very good.
Yeah, they were polished.
This kind of in passing, don't succumb, be aware, cleave unto God to avoid his temptations, that kind of thing. So my reaction was just a recency bias perhaps thing, where I just was reconfirmed that I think I'm hearing it more.
Yeah, I think one thing about the devil, and this is something John Milton discovered when he wrote Paradise Lost.
Weird poem, by the way. I saw a couple stanzas of it.
My grandfather, who drove truck for a living, never went to college, loved Paradise Lost. Read it over and over and over again. Had dozens of copies, all of which were marked up. It rewards rereading. Like, it's intentionally dense. It's not a light read. It's not designed to be fun to read at all. But one thing that happened to Milton is he made this poem, and it's really just a setup for Paradise Regained, about how great Jesus is. But in order to have a hero, you need a villain, and Satan takes Paradise Lost and runs with it. He is the best, most interesting, exciting, fascinating character, and everybody else is like Adam and Eve are kind of stupid, and God is kind of boring. The devil's where it's at. Satan is the most interesting character, and I don't know how Milton really felt about that. That wasn't his goal. And I think this is one of the reasons people are leery of talking about the devil. And, I mean, even in the endowment, the devil's the most interesting character.
Yeah. Well, I think that's not inaccurate. I mean, he's the only one with personality, it seems like. But, I mean, Eve has personality, and Adam have personality.
They're developing personality. In every version, they get a bit more personality. Peter has a bit of personality if you look for it.
Yeah. And yet, when he's dismissed, every time in the endowment, I'm just like, yes, got him.
Yeah. But, this is also interesting, too, because we, uniquely among Christians, are enthusiastic about the fall.
Yeah.
We think it's great. We think it's good.
Full disclosure, dear listener, Eric and I started this conversation on the devil without having any idea where we were going.
Which you might be able to tell.
As opposed to some episodes where we think we have a real thesis. Here, I was just mainly interested in talking about this trend I'd noticed and seeing if there was anything...
Well, I think the devil is as interesting an idea to explore as any other, and this might be one of the situations, like when we talked about Heavenly Mother, where it's the job maybe not of the prophets to tell us what to think, but it's the job of the poets to provide us a way to think about it.
That's interesting you should say that. Can I just say, I don't think there's any call to action in this episode. In previous episodes I think we've had clear call to action.
We're not going to tell you to go out and learn more about the devil.
I'm actually quite happy with the amount of teaching that I get at church, which is essentially zero. I'd much rather spend all of my time at church reading about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And about
we are
the prophets.
A pro-Jesus podcast.
Yeah. But,
like others in the Dialogue podcast family.
Which you should check
Jesus
out.
over devil. Yeah, that is our philosophy.
But here we have this opportunity to just talk about random stuff, so let's do it.
So here's a poet for you.
Okay.
This is Noam Chomsky, who, not his real name, Mormon, younger than me, part of the archive, which we mentioned in our last episode. He posted a short story on their website called The Vision. And it's about the first vision, but it ends with the beginning of the first vision. It's told in a Lovecraftian voice, and it's largely about Joseph walking into the grove and his encounter with Satan, of which the real Joseph wrote the least. And this is an intense experience, and it's a really good story. And I think what I like most about it is I feel like the devil tells the truth. Because I think this is the most interesting thing about the devil is when he is truthful to us.
Well, he's notoriously not truthful.
Yes, but he only gets away with it because he tells the truth so much. Like in this story, for instance, he tells Joseph Smith how much it's going to suck to be Joseph Smith. And how God calls his prophets and then they end up having miserable lives and horrible deaths. That's all true. That's a pretty fair assessment of what God allows to happen to his prophets. And of course, the devil's spin on it is not the spin you or I would bring to it. But as opposed to just a darkness and a feeling like you're choking that Joseph Smith would reduce it to, this makes the devil into something kind of terrifying. And you realize, like, maybe he is a real threat. Lehi says that there must needs to be opposition in all things, which implies that the opposites are maybe equal to each other. But that's a problem because the devil doesn't have a body, and we say that's important. The devil doesn't have a counterpoint to God. His counterpoint is really Jesus, I would say.
Yeah.
So how much
devil will
power
be
are we
beaten.
going to give him? And so if there must needs to be opposition in all things, do we need that much opposition? Like, is it okay for the devil to just be a little pipsqueak that runs around and squeaks things at us? Or does he need to be a terrifying person, like in the Chomsky story?
This is such a great question. I mean, you have to think long ball here, right?
Okay.
At some point, all the people who are going to go through this earth life are going to have gone through this earth life, right?
Sure, that seems reasonable.
Yeah. And
barring certain caveats we discussed in an earlier episode.
The timing of it is interesting.
Yeah.
So, but we the DNC clearly states that they'll just be shut out and cast out, and their influence essentially will end.
Yeah.
Would you say that?
Yes.
So opposition in all things
is maybe not a permanent state. It's
but
just
not a permanent state, not forever.
Have you been watching The Good Place?
Oh, holy smokes!
I haven't seen the last episode, but
yeah, The Good Place.
It's dealing with this question.
Yeah.
Like, what is an eternity without opposition?
Yeah.
Or without growth? These are super Mormon questions.
Yeah. So, yes, I agree. So the opposition, there has to be opposition in all things. Which, by the way, is also, I think, in some ways, an LDS Christian point of view, right? We say that there must be opposition in all things. Where if you read, I'm gonna reference Perelandra again by C.S. Lewis, in which Venus is an unfallen planet, right? And the fact that the devil won on Earth is bad, but on Venus he doesn't win and is beaten. And that becomes a much better world because there is no opposition.
This is why literature is so important. Like,
right?
It's the human laboratory.
Yeah.
You can't do it in real life.
Yeah. And so we disagree with this assertion. We think that we say the fall is one of the pillars of salvation, meaning that it's critical. It's just as important as anything else.
Yeah.
Of course, you could maybe ask, was the devil needed for the fall? And that's an interesting question. I don't think we have an answer for that. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, in popular culture, and a couple examples, like we could start anywhere, but like I'm going to mention a couple things. 1929, the Disney Silly Symphony Hell's Bells, which is great, frankly, super satanic. I really like it. But sticking with Disney, there's The Devil in Fantasia, which is great.
Oh, that guy's scary.
A TV show I really liked. I wouldn't say it's a great TV show. It's not like great TV, but I really liked it. Was about 10 years ago. Was Reaper? Did you ever see Reaper?
Never saw Reaper.
It's about the devil, and he has a kid with some mortal, right? And puts that kid in charge of capturing demons that have escaped hell, and it's a really fun show.
Excellent.
Good Omens has a demon, which is a very attractive character.
I love Good Omens.
Yes, the demons in Terry Pratchett's Eric are attractive. I mean, they're stupid and they're horrible and they're awful, but they're kind of hilarious and stupid and folly-filled. The devil in popular culture suggests that he does play some kind of foil, right? Like, if God is powerful and the devil's the opposite, then shouldn't the devil be a fool? Or if the devil is powerful and terrifying, and then we still need to, like, stuff where the devil is really truly terrifying and there's nothing attractive about him doesn't work. A, because it's not interesting to watch, but also I think because it's not truthful. If there's nothing attractive about Satan, there wouldn't be anything there. But the question is, how is he attractive?
Well, I think that's one of the tricks, right?
Yeah.
Anthropomorphizing a bit.
Yes.
Something where we don't know anything about. I mean, the idea of tricks is kind of part of the arsenal, right? And it goes in many different directions. Yes, making the things more attractive, you know, is powerful. You know, my kids are watching. My family, part of my family is watching Supernatural right now. And one of the interesting things that it does is demonize angels and angelicize demons in some ways. So it brings them closer together. It humanizes them.
Yeah.
And that feels a bit like a trick. I mean, that isn't really something that is supported scripturally at all, right?
Yeah.
The scriptures describe a real us versus them situation.
Which is hard to accept, right? Like, because on Earth, we don't see either or. Everybody is a shade of gray on Earth. There's no purely good people and purely bad people. And I think that's what makes this whole concept hard to understand. And I would imagine where a lot of skepticism comes from. Let's say the devil is the worst possible, right? Yeah. But if a third of the hosts of heaven went with him, presumably they were not all as bad as Satan, and they get better and better and better until there's some line where the 2/3 of the host of heaven that didn't get cut off. And this is where, like, certain racist opinions have come from in the church. Like, this logical idea that everyone can't have been either perfectly good or perfectly bad suggests there must be a grayscale, and if there's a grayscale, then that raises all sorts of other questions, which makes our understanding of eternity seem oversimplified.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we should feel about that. Like, maybe we're wrong, right? Maybe it was right or wrong at that point, and there was nothing in between.
I mean, this is kind of why
maybe
they don't
gray
teach.
exists only in flesh.
They don't teach this in Sunday school. They don't teach any. They don't teach.
Not much.
I mean, and I think that the right to not teach.
I think the Moses story is probably the only thing that is regularly covered when it comes up in Sunday school.
How do you mean?
Well, when Moses meets the devil.
Yeah.
And I suppose the temptations of Jesus and maybe Job also, but...
No, I was meaning like grayness in commandments.
Oh. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm saying that what we're taught in church is right and wrong, good and evil, right?
Well, I don't know. This ties back into what I believe was our previous episode about the word of wisdom and other discretionary commandments.
Yeah, 2 episodes ago. Yeah.
2 episodes ago. So yeah, but also yeah. I mean, in the U.S., it's not unusual to hear people say that you absolutely pay tithing on your gross income.
Yeah.
Because anything else is stealing from God. That's a pretty common thing to see. Not everybody does that, but it's a pretty common thing to hear someone say that. You will hear someone say that at some point.
Yeah.
My understanding is in certain other countries where taxes are way higher than in the U.S., that is not the way they think about it at all. Mm-hmm. Because if they paid on the gross, it would be an enormous percentage of their actual income.
Which is why the temple recommend question is, do you pay tithing?
Right, but
not.
But if they're but we've just established that there's more than one way to say yes to that question, and now all of a sudden the idea of no grayscale is problematic.
And to be fair, I actually don't think this is what the church teaches.
No,
right and wrong, black and white. I think that they actually do teach the Spirit, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the Spirit guides you to make good decisions.
Maybe a better way, he said authoritatively, to make your point, Aaron, is to look at primary and the way things are taught in primary.
Yeah.
There isn't much devil in primary.
There's not.
Nobody ever comes home from Sunbeams with a red...
with a red pitchfork.
A red pitchfork, yeah, talking about, we learned about the devil today.
Mm-hmm. You think that was historically the case?
I don't know. That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, what did primary manuals look like back in 1860?
Well, there were none, but...
Well, fair enough.
That's an interesting question, because, I mean, that's a very good question.
But certainly that's the case now.
Yeah.
And it was the case when I was a kid.
Yes.
I mean, when Sunday school lessons veered towards this topic, they were always shut down pretty quickly. And when people had genuine questions, they were usually answered. But we're not going to spend time on this. We're just going to move on.
I cannot remember a single real conversation about Satan ever in church.
And which is fine.
Yeah, again, like it's not our... We're not promoting more Satan.
That's great. I think we're only talking about it because it's interesting.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the thing is, if Satan is what the average Latter-day Saint would say Satan is, then he's a big deal.
Yeah.
And he is important. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, I don't know what the average Latter-day Saint actually thinks because we don't talk about it. Mm-hmm. And we don't not talk about this in this... as you already pointed out, this isn't the same thing as not talking about Heavenly Mother when we probably should.
Yeah.
This is not talking about it because there's probably no good to come of it, really.
There's no reason to, except that it's interesting.
Yeah, and except that some people say if you don't know about it, then you can't fight against it or something. But I don't know that that's... I mean, live a good life. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Keep the commandments and you'll prosper in the land.
If you are curious, in the Gospel Topics on LDS.org, there is an article on Satan, and it's not that long, but it tells you everything that you really need to know. The adversary or the devil, the enemy of all righteousness and those that seek to follow God, was once an angel, in authority in the presence of God, but is not any longer. Took a third part, by the way, a third part of the host of heaven, which isn't the same thing as a third.
How do you interpret it?
Nobody knows how to interpret it. But it doesn't say 1/3. It says a third part.
A third part. So where'd the second part go?
And where's the first part?
Yeah. Well, I'm clearly part of the first part, Aaron. I don't want to speak for you.
Another good article that's really fun to read is the Wikipedia article on Satan. It is awesome. There's really good art that goes through it. It talks about the history of the word, the name, the various names. It talks about
the accuser. I saw
the accuser. Yeah, that's right. It talks about the hilarious bits of how weird he was in the Middle Ages, and it talks about how the rise of the fear, right?
Yeah. And
how that led to lots of really bad things happening. And it also talks about in other religions like Islam and Baha'i. Baha'i.
Yeah.
And actual Satanism, which I skipped.
Yeah. Well, modern Satanism isn't really Satanism, right? It's more like a parody of religion generally. It's a religion for atheists who don't like the role religion plays in
like the flying spaghetti monster.
Yes, it's very flying spaghetti monster-esque. Modern Satanism as a whole. Yeah.
So there you go. There's a bit of rambling about our enemy, as it were. I think
so. Oh, go ahead.
I think it's okay to be frustrated at the devil.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I've always, when I've not been indifferent or vaguely terrified, I've been frustrated because his plan, for lack of a better word, which is that, we didn't talk about this. One of the, like it says in the gospel topics, one of the central issues at stake is agency versus non-agency, right?
Sure.
The great plan was that we would have agency and we would get to choose, but Satan would take it away and make everybody follow him. I just remember being frustrated that, why would you rebel? I mean, this sounds fine. Let's do it this way. This is what God says. Do you really think that you're better?
Well, history is written by the victor, Aaron. That's what they say Satan wanted.
Well, this goes into the literature. Do you have any more fun stories that you want to bring up?
There's a great new book out called Leere, and there's more to the title. Leere, Goatherd of the LaSalles, I believe. It's by Stephen Peck. He's a BYU professor. He's an evolutionary biologist. We've talked about him on the program before. His novel, Leere, is great, and the narrator is a devil who is disenchanted with the whole heavenly battle and has decided to more or less pull himself out of this and is just an observer of humanity now. And he narrates the novel. And like any good demon, he says a lot of things that are very true. And like any good demon, you have to be skeptical of his motives. I think, in terms of literature, this character of the devil is very useful because sometimes people don't understand irony, right? You can tell a story and not mean a word of it, and some people will believe every word of it. But as soon as you have a devil in there, and the devil's giving the lines, people know to be suspicious. And they know to complicate the story. The book of Job seems to have been written by more than one person. Like, the story proper seems to have been one author, and then the book ends with the devil and God and all that chit-chat. Seems to be a different writer. And adding a moral at the end and a couple things. Because I think the devil is most useful to us, not as an adversary, not as someone to be worried about, but as a storytelling device. Like, if the devil says it, do you still feel the same way about it? Like in the story I mentioned, the vision, when the devil meets Joseph Smith, the devil says things that, phrased differently, you or I would completely agree with. But the way they're phrased, it makes them very, very ugly. And you have to ask yourself, well, do I still believe this thing now that the devil said it? Or do I just not believe the way the devil says it? I think the devil is super useful. But I also think he's potentially dangerous. And for reasons I can't really articulate.
Yeah.
Like, I do agree. I'm not really afraid of the devil.
Yeah.
But...
Well, I'm not either.
Yeah.
But only because I've been given the shield of knowledge, like, of understanding, right? I mean, there's the... We can't end a conversation about the devil without quoting 1 Corinthians 10:13, right? You know, there hath no temptation taken you except that such as common is man, and even so God is faithful and will with the temptation provide a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. Right?
Yeah.
So he can't get you more than you can resist. That's the lesson I always got, and it always made me less worried. I found it very comforting. I don't think that we can just say that he's a storytelling device, which I don't think that's what you were saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that that's how I think he's most useful.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any reason to give him any more power than that.
What about the? Let's just end talking a bit about the linguistic tool that our leaders use in conference. Are we happy?
The adversary, you mean?
Yeah. The just the references, to it, and saying.
No, I'm not. For exactly the reasons I think you should say Voldemort. I think pussyfooting around these things gives them more power.
Oh, that's not what I was referring to.
Oh, that's not what you're referring to.
I'm actually fine with the euphemism.
Oh, okay.
Like, I think saying the adversary as opposed to Satan is fine because I actually don't mind having the blow softened a bit here. Yeah. But what about, I was referring to the general trend. What do you think about the linguistic tool of using the adversary in a general conference talk?
So my personal opinion, and I want to be clear that this is my opinion, and that this is not a universal statement applicable to all talks, but in general, I feel like it's lazy. I feel like instead of making the fuller claim on my spiritual desire to be good, you're dropping a threat instead, which is a less lasting form of motivation. I think as a teenager, I did think about the devil a lot more than I do now, and I don't think it did me any good at all. And maybe there are people for whom fear is a good motivator, but that doesn't sound very New Testament-y to me. I'm not saying there's no place to talk about Satan or to bring him up, but as a general rule, as soon as someone brings up the adversary, I get a little suspicious of their talk, and sometimes it's hard to pull me back in. They lose me for a minute there.
So you would recommend instead?
I would recommend motivating me to be a good person because I want to be a good person. And again, I'm not saying there's no way to do this. There have been talks that have brought up the devil in ways that I found very ingenuous. It's just a lot of the times it feels like it's an easy line to throw. It's not an important part of the talk. It's just like, here's half a sentence that brings the devil into it. And I don't find that sufficient.
Did you mean the word ingenuous?
I did mean ingenuous, yeah. What? As opposed to disingenuous.
Ah.
Yes.
Like
I think it's usually disingenuous. Yeah.
That's good. That's good use of the fancy words.
Yeah.
I think I'm generally in agreement with you. I wonder if it isn't just a relic, a bit of a leftover.
Just a verbal tick.
Yeah, a kind of thing that's going to fade away.
I would not be surprised.
I wouldn't mind it if it did.
When was the last time you heard someone refer to Old Nick?
Never.
Okay. It'll fade away. Although, if somebody mentioned Old Nick to warn me about Satan in general conference, I would appreciate that a little bit more.
That would catch your eye.
I'd be like, oh, okay.
You're going to use that in your next talk, aren't you?
I think most people would think I was talking about Santa Claus.
Yeah, old Saint Nick.
Yeah.
One of the things we've mentioned on the show is that you can contact us, but we've never told you how.
If you really wanted to contact us, you could find my house. Yeah. It's not a big secret.
It's just there.
I could tell you how to do it, but I'm not going to.
Yeah.
Yes, but the easiest and most immediate way to contact me is through Twitter. If you are on Twitter, I am at Thmazing, Thmazing. And
I'm at Aaron Brewster. And our show is at Face and Hat.
That is correct.
Pretty much Twitter's the only way to do it.
Twitter's the best way.
We're a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, a collection of independent, interesting podcasts that promote thoughtful, respectful, engaging inquiry and discussion of all aspects of the LDS tradition, thoughts, arts, and culture. Find out more at dialoguejournal.com/podcastnetwork. All one word.
All one word.
All one word. Don't split that up. You might be interested in some of their latest episodes.
You might be.
Yeah.
And if not, I think I might know why.
Why?
To quote 90s Christian ska band The W's, it's because you are the devil and you are bad. You are the devil and you are bad. You are the devil and the devil is bad. You are the devil and you are bad.